Hello and welcome to the Texas Triffid Ranch, Dallas's pretty much only carnivorous plant gallery. You're seeing the spectacle of a massive rainstorm here that just finished up here while one of the flash sales was going. And this actually turns out to be a perfect opportunity to be able to go ahead and show off Sarracenia, the North American pitcher plant. Now, as far as a pitcher plant is concerned, you have multiple species, running 9 to 12 species, depending on who you're talking to and under what circumstances, as well as a lot of unique, naturally occurring, and artificial hybrids. All members of the genus Sarracenia are able to go ahead and interbreed with each other, so you can get all sorts of interesting varieties, of which we have some of them over here. But first, what we're going to do is we're going to focus on this one here. This is a hybrid of Sarracenia Flama. It's a very common pitcher plant found Florida, Georgia, Alabama and Mississippi up into North Carolina. And in its case, you can see the lid that's up on the top here, as well as the lip for the actual pitcher. In fact, let's go ahead and take a look in there to go ahead and give you a little bit of an idea. Now, with the rainstorm that just came through, this is a perfect opportunity to demonstrate how this lid works. A lot of people will take a look at a pitcher plant and assume, okay, a bug climbs inside, this lid closes on top of it. The reality of it is that that lid is permanent. No force on earth will go ahead and get this to close. It's actually, in fact, a rain guard. Let me go ahead and show you here as to how this bounces. Sarracenia generally tends to live in hurricane areas. They do very nicely in hurricane areas, and that lid is part of the reason why. It keeps the trap from actually filling full of rainwater as it floods, so that it doesn't knock over the pitcher, damage the pitcher, and equally importantly, wash out any prey that they've caught. Now, with all of your Sarracenia, they tend to have 4 different zones of growth. They start off with this area, zone 1, right along the lip, running to about here. All of that is very slick and waxy, and insects that come on in, they're attracted to nectar secreted along the underside of the lid and all along the lip, will go ahead and try to go for nectar glands further on down in zone 1. And if they end up losing their place, you just missed a wasp that came in over here to go ahead and come on in. They'll hang on for dear life with 1 foot sometimes, trying to get extra nectar. Well, little blast of wind, little bit of movement, enough to shake it inside, and it falls in. Now, from here on down is very slick and very wet, or excuse me, is not slick and waxy. It's lined with very strong, very sharp hairs that point downward. Insects that fly in over here and get caught in here will find that if they try to fly out, the shape of the pitcher will actually suck them down further. And if they just climb down, they've got one of 2 choices. Once they hit those hairs, they can either try to climb up and get torn to pieces by trying to climb, or they keep going down. And when the plant runs, or when the insect runs out of down, the plant draws up fluid into its column and drowns the insect. And then bacteria action digests it, and the plant's able to go ahead and absorb the nutrients that way. Now, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to pass on through to take a look at particular ones here. Flava is a great example of the basic structure on the pitchers, but there's a lot of variation. For instance, this guy right here, this is Sarracenia Looka, the white pitcher plant. This is a relatively small plant. When they get large, they get large. And they also have a wide range. They're predominantly called white pitchers because of the white coloration on the lid and all along the lip. But some of them will go ahead and get whiter than others. In fact, many Looka varieties are honestly so white, they look like somebody has tacked a piece of lace on top of the pitcher. And here, right alongside here, is the bloom, which is faded. What we have right now is the seed pod that's forming inside, and you can also see the remnants of the petals that were in here previously. That's where Looka gets its other common name, the Scarlet pitcher plant, because the blooms are bright scarlet colored. And in their case, these also have a tendency to go ahead and fluoresce rather strongly under ultraviolet light. So one of the most fascinating things in the world you can imagine with carnivorous plants is coming across a stand of these under a full moon. Because the moon ends up putting out just enough light that it causes the pitchers to fluoresce slightly. They will glow. And that draws in a lot of nighttime insects. Philia here has a tendency, as opposed to others that are mostly catching things such as bees, wasps, flies, mosquitoes, Looka Philias here tend to catch a lot of night-dwelling insects. They catch a lot of moths. They catch a lot of click beetles, things like that that are normally able to see via ultraviolet and are able to go ahead and pick up a little bit. So they get drawn into this, they get caught inside. In fact, with the click beetles, you can actually have a problem with them where you'll actually hear this horrible thunk, thunk sound from the click beetle desperately trying to go ahead and work its way free and realizing it's not getting out anytime soon. And then also I can go ahead and show you from the top here. You also have a lot of Looka Philia varieties that have varying levels of reddish coloration to them, from anthocyanins that will go ahead and produce that red color. And that's where this guy comes in. This is a hybrid called Scarlet Bell. It's a hybrid of Looka Philia and a slightly related cousin called Sarracenia Flama, the parrot pitcher. And as such, that's why it's got such a weird picture to it. Parrot pitchers have a pitcher that's designed pretty much for catching aquatic insects. In fact, if you take a look here underneath, you can get a fairly good idea as to how that works. They actually have what's referred to as a lobster trap that when the plant is submerged during spring and summer, as they tend to in the Okefenokee swamp, the trap will actually go ahead and catch things such as tadpoles, mosquito larvae, pretty much any aquatic critters you can imagine. And then when it's up on land, they can still go ahead and catch, or when the waters recede, they can still go ahead and catch things like ants. But the vast majority of what they catch is while they're submerged for a time. And so, as such, Scarlet Bell has a tendency to have these weird traps here that really aren't all that effective one way or the other. But they're still a fascinating plant, and they go ahead and they produce really beautiful coloration. And then, coming on down here, we're going to go ahead and we're going to take a look at one of my personal favorites here. This guy is, let's see, this right here is particularly important in Canada, because while most of the other Sarracenia that you see out here are generally found in the Gulf Coast of North America, in the States, ranging from one species that's found in Far East Texas, through Louisiana, separated by the Atchafalaya Basin and the subsequent outflow from the Mississippi River, and then all the way across Alabama, Mississippi, and into Georgia and Florida. This one here ranges all the way up the coast. It runs all the way from the Gulf Coast on up through New Jersey, through New England, and goes all the way up in Canada. In fact, this little guy here is the flower emblem, the Canadian equivalent of a state flower for the province of Newfoundland and Labrador. That this was something that was actually set by Queen Victoria before Newfoundland actually became part of Canada in 1948. And up till that point, you could actually get coinage ordered by the order of Queen Victoria that had a purple pitcher plant on the back, until Malaysia started putting out bills about 2 years ago. This was the only time you could find a carnivorous plant on any kind of currency anywhere in the world. Now these guys here, I get a lot of people who ask, oh, well, you keep these outside, can they handle Dallas winters? And I like to point out, if they can handle a Newfoundland winter, where minus 40 is a gosh number, that is, it means the same thing in Fahrenheit and Celsius. You start to wonder if it means the same thing in Kelvin at that point. In any case, it's they can handle minus 40 winters. If they can handle minus 40 winters, they can definitely handle anything that we've got here going on in Dallas. And I'll go ahead and I'll actually go ahead and come on in to give you a high point here. What you can see is the remnants of last year's leaves, and then these new leaves that are coming on in. All of the Sarracenia go dormant over the winter. That from about the end of October to the beginning of March, honestly, depending on length of day and temperature, they will go ahead and die back. Let's see, if they don't actually freeze off entirely, these traps will continue to go ahead and catch as much light as possible. They may not be catching insects, but they will go ahead and catch plenty of light. In fact, one of the other nice things about the purple pitchers here, as we're going to go ahead and come on in here, is that you have significant amounts of water that collect in here. This is the one plant where the lid actually funnels water instead of trying to keep it from coming on in. And one of the advantages that it has is that water acts as a lens so that both sides of the leaf are able to go ahead and catch significant amounts of light. They also have a lot of critters that will live inside. Certain species of mosquito larvae will grow inside here. You'll also end up with midges and rotifers that will live in here that will feed on prey that they've captured. And the rotifers tend to be so prominent that the plant, on average, based on a study that came out at the turn of the century, pointed out that some 140% of the plant's nitrogen requirements come off of those rotifers. Now, I'll also show you another little extra here. You'll notice on this one here, you've got this this ala, the wing that's on here. Many Sarracenia, when they aren't getting enough light, or alternately, if it's getting too hot, will go ahead and produce these big flat leaves. Here's an example over here. This is what's called a Philia. These are purely photosynthetic leaves. If it gets too hot for the plant to go ahead and produce pitchers, they'll go ahead and throw off Philia like that so they can still photosynthesize. As the plant goes into dormancy, they throw off more Philia. And again, so long as it remains wet enough, they will go ahead and continue to, or so long as it stays cold enough, they will at least try to go ahead and grow these, solely to go ahead and catch as much extra light as possible so that when they come out of dormancy in spring, they can they'll have more than enough starch in reserve to be able to go ahead and produce big blooms and produce big traps. In any case, coming back over here as an overview, like I said, this was just an overview of the flash sale on May 24th, 2020. This is the Texas Tryfid Ranch signing off. Thank you very much. Please feel free to go ahead and check out our website at texastryfidranch.com, and I will catch you later.